Hey, welcome back to the okJLUV channel. Today's video is not clickbait, although that's something that somebody who made a clickbait video would say to get you not to click off the video, but I swear to you that it's not. And I didn't even want to make this video to begin with. I was 50-50 on it and I felt ultimately that I had to. But if there's anything I've learned about YouTube over the last couple of years, is that there's two types of videos and titles that get people going. The first is a video where you just throw money at it. Any video where someone's burying $10,000 in a deserted island or opening up 20-year-old Pokemon cards that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. For some reason, people like to see money thrown about and expensive things done. And hey, I click on those videos too, so you aren't alone. The second type of video is a video that invokes a feeling of fear, anxiety, nervousness. Anything that draws a reaction out of the audience, and particularly a negative one, is a video that will get people clicking and watching. And that's what this video is today. But hey, I don't usually lean on these kind of titles unless, I kind of did it last year a couple of times. And in this one, I even jumped on Pokerev's name, but hey, look, this one's got nearly 20,000 views, so it works. Anyway, I didn't want to make this video because if I get it wrong, I'm going to look like a big fat bozo and I'm going to make a whole bunch of people worry and get stressed out and nervous for no good reason. However, if I get it right and my speculation is correct, it's going to save a lot of collectors from a massive amount of heartache down the line. So the topic of today's video is FBIMG 1663911799389.jpg. It is a Glaceon VMAX alternate art. This is the Japanese version. If you don't know, you can see there is katakana at the top and a mix of hiragana, katakana, and kanji throughout the rest of the card, which means it's Japanese. It's an alternate art from Eevee Heroes, and it was posted in my Discord, discord.gg/okJLUV by a member that I'll refer to as GB, and presented with the question, real or fake. Now, when you get asked a question like that, there's already a predisposition that potentially this card is fake. But when I popped open the image and I looked at it, I said, Cap, this is the most real looking, this looks like the real Glaceon VMAX alternate art from Eevee Heroes. I mean, you've got the glitter, you got the texture. It's really hard to fault this card and point to any one thing that says that it's fake. The story behind it is that it was posted in a local Pokemon card collectors group and then promptly deleted. GB, it came across his desk, his friend sent it to him, and he reached out to the admin and said, hey, what happened to the post? The admin of the group never said anything back. Apparently there was one comment on it that made a mention about the glitter on it, but apart from that, there are no further details. And it's alleged that this is a card that's been produced or manufactured or somehow reproduced by a Chinese supplier in China. Now, when you look at this, it looks very real. Like I said, there's no one thing that jumps out to you and says this is fake. And it's been haunting me for the last 5 days because I don't want to make a video and say, hey, look, this is a fake card definitively, and hide your wife, hide your kids, because yeah, they're reprinting everything out there. No, this looks very real, and it may very well be a real card, and I could be making a whole big something out of nothing. So I guess the first thing I did was I pulled out my copy of the card to compare it, and man, does my copy look good. I picked this up in June of 2021 when there was like this lull period where the cards were just a little bit cheaper right after the set came out, which is bizarre. And I got it for significantly less than it is valued at now, so I'm quite happy about that. But basically, my task was identify areas in this card, the authentic real version that we're looking at here, that differentiated and were basically red flags on the static image that has come from Facebook. My go-to for that is always the energy symbols. So if we zoom in here, the energy symbols next to the attacks are basically, they're always pronounced, like they protrude a little bit. Their Japanese alternate arts are basically layered. Energy symbols, the text, the focal Pokemon, which is Glaceon, any background Pokemon there, and the background itself, they're all typically on different planes, and the energy symbols are almost always at the front. So you can see in the static version that it looks like it's kind of blending in with the whole entire card. You know, even though you do have texturing on the card and there is glitter and sparkle and you've got the outline, they don't really look like they're popping out or they're on a different plane. Whereas in the version we're looking at here, if I rotate it around, you can start to see that other parts of the card glisten and have different texture and sparkle on a different plane to the energy symbols. I don't know if you can really see it in this bit here, but the energy symbols also have tiny circles that slowly get bigger as you get towards the perimeter, creating this circle texture effect. That's always a big giveaway that it's a real, or that's a Japanese alternate art, because you don't really see that on the TPCI international versions of the cards. And I can't see that on this static image here. Now, again, this isn't the greatest angle for the static image and I'm not able to move it around, but from this position and, you know, just having an assessment, I can't really see that. The other other giveaway, I guess, is the ability. So for Glaceon, it's Crystal Veil, and the red text here next to where it says Tokusei, that the Tokusei there on the left, this red bit, it's kind of ruby, looks similar to the static version on Facebook, but the text itself on the right, near where Pikachu's face is, looks different. And again, when I start to move it around left and right, you can see that the text doesn't really change its look, and it looks like it's in the foreground. Basically, it stands out from the rest of it. That's how you get that almost level of depth when you look at it. It's like an optical illusion almost. It tricks you into feeling that the card is deep when really it's just a flat piece of paper. Now you look at Glaceon, okay? Now Glaceon, and then this is a feature of every single Japanese alternate art. The focal Pokemon, the main Pokemon on the card, is always more pronounced than everything else in the card. And that is no exception here for Glaceon. And when you look at the static version, it looks like it blends in entirely. At first glance, I'm looking at the level of detail on the texture. Like if you look at the hoof, or the front right hoof of Glaceon, when you get on this angle here, you can see that the texture bounces off where the hoof hits the lake there. And you get this effect where it's sort of radiating, and you get this like light or beams that are on diagonals that each have texture going in different directions. And the static version, because the light's literally hitting that part directly on the image, the static version looks the same. That's why when I first saw it, it deceived me, and I was like so taken aback, because that's, again, another level of detail that's only present on Japanese cards. So for that to be captured on this fake, to see the supposed fake or whatever it was, to see the static version from Facebook have that same level of detail, for me, I was like, whoa, no, this is real straight away. But when you look at it closer, Glaceon sort of blends into the static version. It doesn't look like it's popping out from the background. Whereas in the real authentic version that we're looking at here, you can see no matter which way I go, Glaceon kind of looks flat. There is texture on it, but for the most part, Glaceon looks flat. I will give it to the static version that the tips of Glaceon's tail and ears and the tips of the hooves, they look flat where they're supposed to look flat, but the rest of Glaceon's body doesn't, which is why I'm still kind of 50-50 on it. You know, is it just the static version's light and angle playing tricks on me, or is that, you know, basically a clear red flag that it is fake? And despite it looking as close to a Japanese authentic card as it does, there are these little tiny details that are given away. Again, you're on the top right, you can see the water energy. Again, it's the same kind of thing. It looks like it is on another layer. It looks like it's at the frontmost part of the card, which is usually how it is for text and the energy symbols, but on the static version, it looks like it's blending in. Even though the static version has glittering on it, and we have glittering on this one as well, it doesn't look like it's more pronounced. And again, with the top left, where you see Sylveon V as the basic, this Pokemon evolves from it, you can see again, on the authentic version, again, it's like a white box where there's nothing happening, where there's no texture on it, and it should be flat. But on the static version, it looks like it blends in with the rest of the card. Final giveaway there is right above the rule box where you got the border showing the retreat cost and the weakness. That is very pronounced. That is like probably more pronounced than any other part of the card. It's right at the front because the border, the rule box, and all those elements are meant to, I guess, be on top of the illustration, on top of the Pokemon, and they very well and truly look like that, especially when you hit it on this angle here. On the static version, it looks like it's blending in with the whole thing. Again, you've got the glitter on those silver bits around the outline where the retreat cost is, but it's not enough to really just push it over the edge and say, yeah, that's on another layer, the way that Japanese cards typically are for alternate arts. Now, I could very well end the video here and just call it a day and say I compared my real version to the static image there, and I'm pretty confident that the static image is a fake and mine's the real one, and there's fakes out there, but I feel like that would be doing it a bit of an injustice. We need to dive a little bit deeper into it because there was an announcement this week that basically pushed me over the edge and said, okay, we got to make this video. So to start the whole thing, you got to differentiate the fact that there are two different types of Pokemon cards in the world. If you don't know this, basically the international version is the main one, and that's the version that's distributed by TPCI. And it's not the English version. No, it's actually the English version, which is this card here, as well as the German version. This is the Umbreon VMAX alternate art, but in German. It's also the Italian version, it's the French version, it's the Spanish version. There are multiple different versions around the world that we consider the international release, and the one common denominator, the shared trait that they have, is that the print quality and the texture is basically identical, and they all share the same traditional Pokemon card back that we're all pretty familiar with. And the international version is localized, produced and distributed by Millennium Print Group. There's a video that came out, you might have seen this during the week, which we're gonna jump into in a little bit. That's the international version. Then you've got the versions that come out in Asia. Now I had to lean on a friend here, Crystal Collects. She's got a YouTube channel, you can go and subscribe to that. She's basically the authority, she's the expert on multi-language Pokemon cards, especially in the Asia region. So there's a few different Asian versions of Pokemon cards. The first is the Korean version, and this is the exception because the Korean version basically looks exactly the same as the version distributed by TPCI. It's got that, you know, fingerprint looking texture where it doesn't really look like it has a whole lot of layers to it, and the texturing is pretty fat and thick. You can see crystals moving around there. That basically looks exactly the same as the English version. If you got that card, go and pull it out and compare it. The Korean version is, as far as I understand, it's printed in Korea. I might be wrong on that. I actually should have asked Crystal that. I was talking to her about this anyway. The point is, it looks identical to the TPCI international version. The other versions out there is the Indonesian version. Okay, and again, Crystal Collects has opened this up. And if you collect Japanese Pokemon cards, you will notice straight away this has a very similar texture. The triangles on this are very pronounced. When you rotate it in the light and you can see it reflects, there's different layers, there's a depth to Umbreon as well. This is basically the same print as the Japanese version, and that's because the Indonesian version is printed in Japan, and this is key here. Another version that releases in Asia is the Thai version, and again, this is different to the Indonesian and the Taiwan version. I'm gonna jump into that in a minute, but again, same exact texturing, same styling as the Japanese version, and that's because it's printed in Japan. So it's distributed in Thailand, but it's manufactured and printed in Japan. So it's got the same texture, the same line work, the same coloring. It's different to the version by TPCI. There's one other version that again is printed in Japan, and that's the Taiwanese version that's distributed throughout Taiwan and Hong Kong. And this is the version that is in traditional Chinese, and it's different to the Chinese announcement or set that got released or announced, sorry, a couple of days ago. And again, same thing, because it's printed in Japan, it's got the same Japanese texture. You've got the depth to Flareon there. There's layers to it. You've got extra detail. It just looks a little bit poppier. It's more pronounced, and that's a key feature for Japanese cards. And again, it's because these are printed in Japan. All those versions have the English back or the international back that everyone's very familiar with. The only version that has the Japanese back is the Japanese version. Now, this is the announcement that basically pushed me over the edge and said, hey, we're going to talk about this. And it's the announcement that the Pokemon Company is releasing TCG for China. Now, the key here is that it is different to the Taiwanese and the Hong Kong release. The Taiwanese and the Hong Kong release, they are printed in traditional Chinese, which is different to this release that is going to come out at the end of October that's printed in simplified Chinese. Now, there are differences between those. I don't know them because I don't speak Chinese. I'm not going to pretend to understand the difference, but basically, they are different. Hey, real quickly, I'm going to be casting a massive Pokemon card tournament this Sunday, 11 a.m. AEST at twitch.tv/thetoptableau. I'm going to be joined by an awesome crew featuring previous world champion Henry Brand. I want to see you down there. Come and support us in the chat. Back to the fake card. But the key takeaway there is that it's coming out in China. And the one thing that just troubles me about this is that I don't think these are going to be printed in Japan. I don't see how they can be. Japanese Pokemon cards already basically pushed to their limits. You know, print quality has deteriorated over the last year and a half. It's only gotten worse. And when you've got the Thai version, the Indonesian version, and the Taiwanese and Hong Kong versions being printed in Japan alongside the Japanese version, it's pretty clear to me that the printers there and the manufacturing facilities are being pushed to their utmost limit. If you're going to go and throw in the simplified Chinese version as well as all those other regions, I think at some point something's got to give. I don't think it's realistic to assume that these are going to be printed in Japan. So I think it's a fair assumption to make that this release is going to be printed in China. And while the simplified Chinese version looks like it's going to have the international back, which we're all familiar with, you can see in this image here, it's presented there, and also in the trailer for a very, very brief moment, you can see it just flick on the screen there like that. I don't think it's a safe assumption to make that it's going to have the same print quality as TPCI's international release. Just very recently, we did see that TPCI shared, or Millennium Print Group rather, shared a behind the scenes of how Pokemon cards are made. And there's a video here where they actually go in depth and they show the design prep for full art cards. I'm going to share it with you because it's extremely interesting if you haven't seen it.
The Illustrator file just kind of like maps out like the general shape of the character, and I'll isolate a group and kind of see what the line is doing, and then I actually go in and make that pattern. The swirl goes like the same direction. I'm just looking at it and replicate it. I'm gonna put our own little spin on it. See how our cards have a little bit more shine to them.
Now this little tidbit is extremely interesting because it confirms something that we've kind of heard for a little while, and that's that Creatures Inc. don't share their printing methodology and their texturing methodology with TPCI. That's something that we've known for a little while, and it's pretty evident when you look at the cards. The English versions just don't look as good as the Japanese versions, despite them sharing basically all the resources and the templates and the designs of the cards, and they even send them the Japanese versions of the cards as an example. It looks like Millennium Print Group or whoever is involved at this stage of the design process has to go and basically recreate the texturing type. So for me, this says that it's kind of maybe a trade secret for Creatures that they don't really share that printing methodology with anybody. Unless, of course, they're sharing it with the manufacturing and printing facilities in China for the simplified Chinese version, which is why I'm looking at this and saying, hey, maybe there's a reason why there's a Glaceon VMAX that looks almost identical to the Japanese version, but a little sus, because that information or that data somehow leaked and got into the wrong person's hands. And I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption or a type of speculation that's unfair, considering in the past there's been so many leaks for at least the English side of cards that aren't coming out for a couple of months, just all of a sudden getting listed on eBay for hundreds of dollars. It doesn't surprise me, and it wouldn't surprise me if somehow the information and that trade secret, because it does feel like a bit of a trade secret for Creatures, has somehow been compromised and leaked because someone's made a decision to say, okay, we want the Japanese style of print quality for the simplified Chinese version. We don't want it printed in Japan. We want to print it in China. So we're going to send that data and that information to them to basically do it exactly the same without them having to recreate it and have this third type. It doesn't seem logical to me that Millennium Print Group would send their recreated versions to China for the simplified Chinese version. They may, I don't know. Like it could go either way, but the fact that this card exists and looks as close to the real thing as it does is crazy. And the implications of this being real are quite severe. If we go and look at the prices of Eevee Heroes, and it's kind of funny that they use Glaceon instead of Umbreon, because Glaceon isn't the most expensive, Umbreon is, but it's still in its own right ridiculously expensive, 77,800 yen for the Glaceon VMAX, which is about $500 US. The Umbreon VMAX, which is sold out, 218,000 yen, which is about 1,500 USD. By the way, all the people that were like, oh, okJLUV, it's reprinting, you were wrong, and they're all going to get cheaper. They got cheaper, yeah, for what, like half a day? I hope you bought the dip. Anyway, enough rubbing in your face. My point is, if this is real, it's terrible, because they basically got a money printing machine. You just make 10 of these cards, you've got 15,000 USD. And if you're going to make 10, you're probably going to make more. Like I said, it's actually quite insane. Maybe it's not going to be so obvious. Maybe they're going to slowly filter them out, maybe to Japanese stores, or they're going to ship them all over to the US. Maybe they got a buddy over there, and then their buddy lists them and puts them on eBay US and sells them there. You just don't know. If these somehow infiltrate and sneak their way into the Japanese supply, it's going to have ridiculous implications for Japanese Pokemon cards, because it's going to devalue them all. If it's found out that they're fakes and there isn't an easy way to determine that it's fake, it will basically kill the value of cards. And as collectors, there's an argument to be made that, maybe not all cards should be worth as much as they are. And I kind of agree with that. I don't think it's rational, logical that this card is worth 1,500 USD. However, it should be worth something because it's popular and it's difficult to find, and the set is really hard to get a hold of. And collectors kind of want their collection to be worth some amount of value, especially if they've paid a lot of money to get it. If you spent $1,000 to get this card and the fakes come out, and then because there's fakes in the market and it's impossible to tell whether it's fake or not, they all become, a $200 card, you're going to feel pretty bad. If it just naturally becomes a $200 card because people aren't interested in Pokemon anymore, they start selling their cards, that's a totally different story, and that's a natural adjustment or a retrace of the market. But if it's because people are making fake cards, that's going to suck. The other side of this is that I may have gotten my comparison and analysis totally wrong, and I could have, because I'm looking at a dynamic version here under 2 different lights and a 4K camera versus a static image where it's just light hitting it in one direction and I'm looking at it from this angle. These cards look different depending on the way the light hits them and the angle that you're viewing them. So if this is a real card, it looks exactly the same as a Japanese card that comes out of a booster pack. Is it actually fake at that point? Just because it's manufactured and reproduced, if it looks exactly the same, is it fake? And how are you supposed to tell? If I bought this and someone said to me after the fact, like, I know definitively that came out of a factory, not a booster pack, I don't know, is it a cope? Would you still like it? This is the whole thing. It has implications for any card that's being listed right now. So why I would not buy anything that's listed on eBay US, because you just don't know. This could have happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. These cards may have already infiltrated the system. The fakes might already be out there. If we draw the line in the sand and say, you know, anything August 2022 prior is probably safe, I think that's a fair bet to make. So if you've already got these cards, I feel like you're basically chilling. So I'm chilling, you're chilling. If you've just bought these cards recently, I'd be slightly sweating a little bit. And if you're bidding on one right now, I just wouldn't. I wouldn't buy any of these out of, if it's not anywhere from Japan, I just wouldn't buy them. And even Japan isn't a safe bet, because again, all you got to do is just ship them over to Japan, fool one of the card shops, and then all of a sudden you got fakes on the market, or you manage to sell them on Mercari because you don't list them too cheap, but they are cheaper than the rest, and someone buys them up, and then you've got issues. The other thing that we can look at, and we should have a look at this and analyze this over the next, I guess, few months, is if the pop report at PSA changes at any point. 095 is the Umbreon Alt-Art, the hyper that we want to look at, and you can see there's 876 PSA 10s, which is a lot. You know, I feel like anything that has a pop report of over like 500, there's nearly 1,000 graded cards is generally a lot. If this changes, you know, if all of a sudden we see like another 1,000 cards in the next 3 months, this is a year of Eevee Heroes existing. If we see all of a sudden influx, there's like another 500 all of a sudden out of nowhere, and then there was a reprint, but it wasn't very big, then I think that's a safe bet to say, hey, something a little sussy is going on, and I think maybe those fakes might have infiltrated through PSA. If the fakes are real enough looking, or if it's a grading company that has a bad history of grading cards that are fakes, I don't know, I'm not going to put any names out there because you get sued, and I don't want to disappear. I'm too young to disappear. Anyway, like I said, I don't want to make it out like the sky is falling. I don't want to make people worry for no reason. I just felt like I had to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, I've noticed this. And if you've noticed anything like it, tell me. That way we can maybe confirm or go one way or the other. It will help. Leave a comment, DM me, like and subscribe. And remember to go follow the Top Table AU over at Twitch. Their link is in the description. I'll be casting it on Sunday. Until then, I don't know. You know, just quietly, if you're still here, I don't know what it is with people these days and just trying to take advantage of others. And why do people want to see the world burn? I just don't get it. Anyway, peace out.